Welcome back to our channel where we share updates and untold stories about Catherine, Princess of Wales and her royal family. Today we bring you some news royal in shock AI discovery leaves, experts stunned in Princess Diana case. A story claims that AI discovered something in Princess Diana's car that left experts astonished. The recent revelations about the true circumstances of Princess Diana's murder have astonished everyone. The vehicular catastrophe that resulted in the death of Diana, Princess of Wales in Paris in 1997 continues to evoke widespread fascination, media examination, and unresolved inquiries. For almost 2 decades, official investigations by French and British authorities determined that the catastrophe resulted from an intoxicated driver operating recklessly and photographers pursuing them with undue aggression. Legally and historically, the official findings have been regarded as definitive a tragic accident attributed to human error and the pressure of incessant media scrutiny. Sources indicate that a recent re-evaluation of the extensive documentary and material evidence pertaining to the case conducted using modern artificial intelligence technologies has uncovered patterns and anomalies that challenge the previously accepted narrative. The technology study reportedly identified statistical anomalies and concealed links previously unknown by analyzing hundreds of papers, witness testimonies, forensic reports, and other information. This has prompted a re-evaluation of the circumstances surrounding the fatal collision. It is essential to emphasize that these technological discoveries do not alter the fundamental details of the crash. A Mercedes S280 transporting Diana Dodi Fayed, their bodyguard, Trevor Rees-Jones, and driver Henri Paul collided in the Pont de l'Alma underpass in the early hours of August 31, 1997. Paul and Dodi Fayed perished, followed by the demise of Princess Diana. The novel technology purportedly offers an alternate approach for analyzing current data, focusing on probability pattern recognition and the identification of statistically unlikely event conjunctions. Individuals seeking to comprehend this technique must juxtapose it with the initial inquiries and the computational instruments now used. This report aims to provide a comprehensive and precisely contextualized account. It will detail the course of Diana's public life in her final years, reconstruct the timeline of her last hours in Paris, summarize the key findings of the official investigations, and subsequently outline the inconsistencies and systematic anomalies alleged to have emerged from a modern AI-assisted review of the case materials. A public figure being watched like never before. By the middle of the 1990s, Diana, Princess of Wales, had changed a lot in the eyes of the public. She started her life as a princess as a very quiet young newlywed. In little over a decade, she became one of the most well-known and powerful people in the world. Diana had a strange connection with the public. Many people loved and cared for her deeply. Yet at the same time, the press invaded her life like no one else. People saw her as both a sign of caring involvement with humanitarian issues and a symbol of the personal price of being famous. People have spoken and written a lot about Diana's personal life in public. The marriage that was once seen as a contemporary fairy tale fell apart because of problems that were well known and extramarital affairs involving both parties. Her 1995 interview with the BBC for the show Panorama is widely seen as a turning point. In that interview, she openly talked about her struggles with eating disorders, depression, and the mental stress of being a member of the British royal family. She said, "There were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded," which many people took as a direct reference to Camilla Parker Bowles's public presence. This kind of openness made Diana seem more human to millions of people who regarded her as a vulnerable, sympathetic person. At the same time, it made things worse with the royal family and gave tabloids and paparazzi a lot of material to work with as they fought to get private moments. Diana purposely looked for a new public identity after the legal separation in 1992 and the divorce in 1996. This new identity was less on being a princess and more about her activism and public involvement. She put a lot of time and effort into many humanitarian projects, leveraging the exposure she got across the world to bring attention to situations that were frequently ignored or stigmatized. Notably, she became a well-known champion for persons living with HIV/AIDS at a time when there was still a lot of stigma around it. She also fought hard against the deployment of anti-personnel landmines. Her trip to an Angolan minefield in January 1997, when she walked along a cleared road with warning signs all around her, made famous pictures, and is generally credited with getting more people and politicians to pay attention to the landmines problem. Because she was so well known and because her deeds had such strong symbolic meaning, some pundits called her the People's Princess. However, this greater freedom and action in the public eye made living without the complete protection of the monarchy much riskier. Diana was often being followed by photographers and reporters since she didn't have as much official protection, and her lifestyle brought her into touch with the public and worldwide media a lot. The paparazzi followed her around the world, taking pictures of her vacations, meetings, and intimate times of weakness with an obsessive desire to get exclusive pictures. In the summer of 1997, this obsession with her connection with Dodi Fayed, the son of Egyptian millionaire Mohammed Al-Fayed, reached new heights. Long-lens photography captured their time together in the Mediterranean, and pictures of the pair sparked a lot of public attention and were worth a lot of money. People close to Diana subsequently said that she was becoming more and more tormented by the feeling of being hunted, which meant not just breach of privacy, but also a deep dread for her safety and well-being. Diana and Dodi Fayed came in Paris on the evening of August 30th, 1997, looking for what they assumed would be a short break before going back to London. This was because of the strong media attention, the lack of institutional security, and the need for normal experiences. Instead, that visit was the last chapter of a life spent in the public eye in a very unusual way. The final hours. A timeline of what happened in Paris. Investigators and later media have put together a very detailed timeline of Diana's last hours. What comes out is a series of choices made because they wanted to get away from the press camp that had sprung up outside the Ritz Hotel in downtown Paris. Diana and Dodi Fayed traveled from Sardinia to Paris on August 30th, 1997. They got at Le Bourget Airport in the afternoon. They proceeded right away to the Ritz Hotel, which Dodi's father owned at the time. The couple had intended to eat at Chez Benoit, a well-known restaurant in Paris, but there were at least 30 cameras outside the hotel, so that plan was impossible. They went to the hotel's 2-Michelin-star restaurant, L'Espadon, instead. The couple went to the Imperial Suite to get more solitude, even though the hotel's dining room was rather private. They were very conscious of other people's attention, which ruined the mood. Dodi said he wanted to spend the night in his own apartment near the Arc de Triomphe as the night went on. His security team and the Ritz personnel came up with a fake plan to keep photographers from gathering outside the hotel. The idea was for 2 hotel cars to leave the main gate on the Place Vendôme in a way that would draw attention away from Diana and Dodi, who would leave the hotel quietly by a back door on the Rue Cambon. A black 1994 Mercedes-Benz S280 would be waiting in the back. Henri Paul, the hotel's acting head of security, was going to drive it. Henri Paul had been off duty earlier in the evening, but he was summoned back to the hotel at 10:00 p.m. to help the couple leave. This fact became very important in subsequent investigations and public discussion. Around 12:20 a.m. on August 31st, the decoy operation began. Diana Dodi and Trevor Rees-Jones went via the back door and got into the waiting Mercedes. Paul drove, Rees-Jones sat in the front passenger seat, and Diana and Dodi sat in the back. No one in the car was wearing seatbelts except for Rees-Jones. The decoy worked to some extent to distract some photographers, but not completely. Several other people on motorbikes and in automobiles saw through the trick and chased the Mercedes as it sped away from Rue Cambon. The car drove down the Cours la Reine and Cours Albert the Fermé, which ran along to the Seine. The driver sped toward the Pont de l'Alma underpass instead of using a less crowded street route or a way that is advised by regular safety procedures for high-profile passengers. Paul lost control of the automobile about 12:23 a.m., just as the Mercedes was entering the tunnel. The reconstructed versions say that the car hit a white Fiat Uno in a glancing blow, then veered and hit the 13th pillar that supports the ceiling of the tunnel practically head-on. The crash was terrible. The front end of the Mercedes was smashed. Henry Paul and Dodi Fayed were killed right away at the spot. Trevor Rees-Jones, who was wearing a seatbelt, lived but was hurt badly. Princess Diana was badly hurt and lived for a short time after the tragedy. The crash, what happened after, and the official investigations. The time just following the crash in the Pont de l'Alma tunnel was quite hectic and emotional. Some of the photographers who had been following the automobile got to the debris within minutes of the crash. Witnesses say that several of these people chose to take pictures instead of helping the people in the car. This behavior was widely condemned and added to the public fury at the moment. Dr. Frédéric Maillier, an emergency room doctor who was off duty and happened to be traveling through the tunnel, was the first medical expert to get to the incident. At first, he didn't know who Princess Diana was, but he gave her emergency assistance while she was unconscious but breathing. In several ways, the official emergency response protocols in France are different from those that are typical in the UK and the US. French emergency services often use a stay-and-play procedure, which means they stabilize the situation and provide advanced medical treatment at the scene of the collision before trying to transfer the patient to a hospital. This method is different from the scoop and run concept, which puts getting someone out of danger quickly and taking them to the hospital emergency room right away at the top of the list. Because of the French procedure, it took a long time to get Diana out of the debris, stabilize her health enough for transport, and gather the resources needed for a clinically controlled transfer. Official documents say that Princess Diana had a heart attack at the site and was revived before being put in an ambulance. The ambulance didn't exit the tunnel until 1:41 a.m., which was almost an hour and 20 minutes after the crash. The trip to the Pitié-Salpêtrière hospital, which was less than 4 miles away, took another 40 minutes. The ambulance is said to have gone at a slow speed on the advice of medical staff, who were worried that moving too quickly could cause harmful changes in blood pressure. Diana died around 4:00 a.m. after doctors worked hard to preserve her life at the hospital. The most serious injury was a torn pulmonary vein. After what happened in Paris, there were 2 big official inquiries. The first was a French court investigation that lasted for 18 months and finished in 1999. This inquiry found that the collision happened because Henri Paul was driving too fast and dangerously while drunk and on prescription drugs. Reports say that toxicology testing indicated that Paul's blood alcohol level was more than 3 times the legal limit. The French courts did not hold the photographers who chased the car responsible for the incident, even though they were chastised for their behavior. In 2004, the royal coroner in the UK asked the Metropolitan Police to start a second bigger investigation, which they called Operation Paget. This investigation took 3 years and a lot of money and time to look into the various conspiracy theories and claims that had been made in public, many of which came from Mohammed al-Fayed, the father of Dodi Fayed. Operation Paget's full report, which came out in 2006 and was over 832 pages long, looked at the physical, testimonial, and documentary evidence in great detail. The French authorities agreed with its findings. It found no convincing evidence of a plot to kill Princess Diana and said the fatalities were the consequence of a terrible accident caused by what it called grossly negligent driving by Henri Paul and the cars that were following him. A further inquest in London in 2008 found the driver guilty of unlawful killing for reasons that were similar to those of earlier investigations. This again pointed to the driver's guilt and the photographer's participation in the accident. persistent problems with the use of AI. Even with these official findings, pundits, family members, and onlookers continued to point out a lot of strange things and unanswered concerns in the years that followed. These kinds of discrepancies kept people skeptical, and that mistrust has never really gone away. These unsolved issues, missing time periods, inexplicable movements of important people, strange ways of managing evidence, and different ways of understanding forensic data are what current AI-based reanalyses have supposedly looked at again. The technological re-examination reported in the media involves the use of machine learning and other computational techniques on the large amount of information related to the case, such as police reports, autopsy reports, witness statements that are thousands of pages long, forensic lab tests, communication logs, CCTV footage, and other related records. Modern algorithms are touted for their ability to execute specific tasks at scales and with levels of pattern sensitivity that surpass human capabilities. They can discern subtle correlations among diverse data types, pinpoint statistical outliers, and assess the joint probability of intricate sequences of events. The proponents of the recent review underscore this capability as the rationale for reassessing enduring anomalies, whereas human investigators might have regarded isolated irregularities as independent or coincidental algorithmic systems, can assess whether those irregularities converge into a recognizable pattern that is improbable to have occurred by chance. The main things that people have kept looking at, and that the AI-driven work is believed to have looked at again, are 1. The condition of Henri Paul. Official reports said that Paul was drunk when he was summoned back to work and when the collision happened. Family, relatives, Ritz staff, and others who saw him that night strongly disagreed with that decision, saying that he had not shown clear evidence of being drunk in the way he behaved or walked. Security film from the Ritz taken just before the Mercedes left shows him walking and bending with what seems like ease. Those who disagree with the toxicological results have made a big deal out of these facts. The computational reanalysis is said to have compared the post-mortem toxicology results to a huge amount of medical and experimental research on alcohol impairment. It found that the difference between the lab measurements and the observed motor performance indicators was a statistical outlier. 2. Time that hasn't been accounted for and money transactions that don't make sense. Investigators found that Paul had funds and transactions in his bank accounts that he couldn't properly explain. Also, it was unclear where he was for about 3 hours that night. The AI-led reappraisal reportedly used known cell phone records, employment logs, and other time-stamped records to create a shorter timeline of his movements and communications. This made it easier to see time gaps that the computational model saw as chronologically important rather than incidental. 3. The choice of route and the speed of the vehicle. Security experts have long said that going inside the Pont de l'Alma tunnel was not in line with normal safety rules, which usually say to stay away from enclosed spaces because they make it harder to get out and make it harder to be conscious of what's going on. The vehicle's speed, which was measured in several reconstructions as being much over the posted limit, has also been called unusual for a professional security driver trying to reduce danger, even if they were trying to get away from a gathering of reporters. The algorithms in the most current investigation are reported to have looked at the choice of route and speed as part of a broader look at how people made decisions that night. 4. The Fiat Uno in white. Forensic investigators recovered bits of white paint and a tail light that matched up with a white Fiat Uno that had been in touch with the Mercedes just before it hit the tunnel pillar. The French police worked hard to find the Fiat and its driver, but in the end they couldn't. Jean-Paul Anderson, a press photographer who was frequently called James, possessed a white Fiat Uno and was said to have been following Diana's party. Anderson said he wasn't in Paris that night. In 2000, he was discovered dead in a burned-out automobile, and the case was officially ruled a suicide, although several people have questioned this conclusion. The new computational evaluation supposedly looked at the fiat's existence and then its removal from the evidence record as a separate low-probability event that needed more attention since it wasn't resolved. 5. How to deal with evidence and missing data. Critics of the official investigation said that there were many problems with the way it was done. For example, CCTV cameras along parts of the Mercedes route were said to have been broken or out of alignment. The crash scene was cleared and the tunnel reopened within hours, which limited forensic opportunities, and some parts of the wrecked Mercedes later went missing from storage facilities. According to reports, the AI analysis put these events into a category called systematic data gaps. It looked at where the missing or compromised evidence was and how it was focused, and came to the conclusion that the pattern of loss was more likely to be due to selective removal than a series of unrelated administrative mistakes. Reported results of the AI analysis. The computational work that has been mentioned in the news has a number of methodological steps that need to be explained briefly. Usually, this kind of analysis needs to convert handwritten notes, typed reports, photos, CCTV video lab results, and audio recordings into forms that computers can read. Once the data sets are put together, they are pre-processed to make sure that timestamps are consistent, that names and references are not mixed up, and that links are made between pieces of evidence that have the same time, place, or person qualities. The machine learning models then use a mix of statistical methods, such as anomaly detection algorithms, to find outliers, network analysis to find relationships between people and events, natural language processing to look at language patterns in testimony, and probabilistic modeling to guess how likely it is that two data sets will happen together. Based on the project's public descriptions, the study focused on a few key areas and came up with results that would make the official story more complicated if they were taken at face value. It is important to note that a lot of the reporting on these discoveries uses careful phrasing including reportedly, allegedly, and is said to have. This is because computational inferences are not always reliable, and the work is still up for discussion in public. 1. Strange things that happen when things converge. One of the main things that the AI system does is find what analysts call convergence anomalies. This term describes situations where several independent events, each of which could be explained on its own, happened at the same time and in a statistically unlikely way. The system reportedly calculated that the combination of at least 7 important factors on the night of the crash, Henry Paul's unexpected recall to duty, his choice of a route that included the Pont de l'Alma tunnel, the malfunctioning or misalignment of several CCTV cameras along the route, the presence and disappearance of the white Fiat Uno delays and choices in the emergency response, and unusual financial transactions linked to Paul was so unlikely to happen by chance that it was very unlikely to happen at all. One news story says that the possibility of such an alignment happening by chance is less than 0.3%. If this number is correct, it would draw attention to the whole pattern instead of just one strange piece of data. 2. Analysis of testimony using language. According to reports, the AI method used natural language processing (NLP) on the large number of witness statements and sworn testimony that French and British investigators had collected. NLP technologies may look at word choices, sentence structures, the use of emotionally charged phrases and patterns of repetition or strange wording. They are often used to find signs that show the difference between written or prepared language and spontaneous speech. People who worked on the project said that the computer analysis discovered that a large number of testimonies, some reports say as much as 73%, showed language indicators that are statistically linked to either rehearsal or outside influence. The algorithm supposedly pointed up cases when words, sequences of events, and even time details were strangely similar among different witnesses. This suggested that a controlled narrative may have been created and spread among certain responses. 3. Mapping behavior and time. According to reports, the computer analysis created a detailed chronology of movements and contacts involving important people throughout the 24 hours before and after the incident. The program is believed to have found patterns of interaction and co-occurrence that weren't clear in prior human-led evaluations by correlating phone records, pager messages, and known physical locations. The AI marked certain setups as operational stress signatures. These are groups of quick decisions, synchronous communications, and movement patterns that are more likely to happen in coordinated operations than in disorganized or improvised activity. The timing of Henri Paul's return to the Ritz is one example that has been reported in the media. The analysis allegedly found temporal correlations between his recall and other movements and communications that the model judged to have a less than 0.01% chance of being random. 4. Forensic data holes. Human assessors thought that the loss or contamination of physical evidence was due to a series of procedural mistakes or bad luck. However, the AI system apparently found an organized pattern of selective absence. The investigation discovered a non-random distribution of missing or compromised evidence by monitoring the chain of custody entries for physical things ranging from components of the Mercedes to laboratory tests. It is claimed that things whose absence would most directly affect contentious elements of the incident, the purported pre-collision interaction with the Fiat Uno, the intricate dynamics of the Mercedes' structural failure, were disproportionately represented among the omissions. The system saw that distribution as more in line with purposeful suppression than with a collection of random administrative mistakes. Caveats: interpretation, and the boundaries of computational inference. It is essential to contextualize these computational results within a more extensive epistemic framework. Statistical models and machine learning can show connections and point out strange things, but they can't prove cause and effect or legal responsibility on their own. The quality and completeness of the incoming data, the assumptions built into the model designs, and the thresholds set for deciding if anything is an anomaly all affect the results of an algorithm. Additionally, computational systems function based on probabilistic metrics, resulting in degrees of plausibility rather than definitive classifications. Using machine-derived probabilities in public discourse runs the danger of turning subtle statistical data into assertions that seem more certain than the approach can fully justify. There are also other more practical limits to think about. The datasets available for analysis are results of the processes being examined, missing CCTV video, possibly corrupted chain of custody documents, and conflicting witness accounts all represent inputs with varying levels of integrity. If an algorithm finds a pattern of missing data that doesn't appear random, that result should be seen as a sign that humans need to look into those particular absences more closely, not as evidence that someone is trying to harm them. AI can be a great way to go through things and find things that need further attention. However, it can't replace the forensic documentary and testimonial procedures that are used in legal and criminal investigations. Simultaneously, advocates of computational reanalysis contend that algorithmic examination may alleviate certain cognitive biases and constraints inherent to human investigators. When people are presented with a lot of data, they tend to normalize strange events, interpret unusual coincidences as isolated mistakes, and downplay low-probability conjunctions because they are hard to understand intuitively. By assessing the combined improbabilities of many occurrences and mapping relationship patterns across diverse evidence kinds, machine systems may reveal hidden configurations that need further scrutiny. Conclusion: technology, probability, and a lasting enigma. According to published reports, using artificial intelligence on the data surrounding Princess Diana's death does not provide an indisputable alternative narrative that would replace the official findings of the French and British investigations. The algorithms and statistical models referenced in recent stories do not independently effectuate arrests or convictions. They do not in isolation provide the substantive evidence requisite to reverse a judicial determination. People say that these kinds of studies provide us a new way to look at the current data by using statistical pattern recognition. From that point of view, the official story of a simple collision caused by one drunk motorist trying to avoid the press becomes less convincing when you look at the fact that other strange things happened at the same time. The AI reviews specific findings, convergence anomalies, linguistic markers, and witness statements that suggest non-spontaneity, operational signature patterns in communications and movements, and a non-random distribution of missing forensic items together show that parts of the case that were thought to be unrelated are now seen as connected parts of a complex data landscape. The algorithmic argument does not assert that these traits substantiate a conspiracy, rather they diminish the likelihood of mere coincidence to a degree that warrants repeated scrutiny, transparent reassessment, and perhaps focused investigative follow-up. At this time, the official findings of the French judicial investigation Operation Paget and the London inquest continue to be the legal and historical record. However, the use of modern computational methods in the study of this well-known instance adds a new level to the public conversation that is already going on. It shows how new techniques can show hidden structures in ancient evidence collections, and how the way we think about events that happened a long time ago may change when new approaches are used. In the end, the case of Diana, Princess of Wales, sits in a complicated place between facts that have been proved and questions that have not yet been answered. Recent claims of a technical reconsideration imply that the shadows in the story may be deeper and more complex than early investigators could have seen without these instruments. It is still unclear whether such shadows hide intentional activity, a pattern of carelessness, systemic errors, or a combination of unusual but unrelated incidents. It is evident that the narrative remains unexhausted by previous investigations. Amid the extensive archive of records, statements, and artifacts, there may yet exist nuances that have yet to be revealed by a discriminating tool. The public and legal need for clarity endures, and the emergence of computational reanalysis has re-established a domain where probability pattern and historical interpretation converge, prompting further examination of one of the most analyzed tragedies of recent decades. Thank you for watching the video. Please let us know your thoughts and goodbye for now.